In the stillness of night, with visibility nearly non-existent and the runway lights serving as their sole navigational aid, AIRES Flight 8250 approached San Andres following a 4-hour delay and adverse weather conditions en route. The crew believed that only one final landing separated them from the conclusion of a long day. However, the pilots were oblivious to the peril concealed in the darkness. Under the impression that they were safely above their intended flight path, they inadvertently descended too low, falling prey to the notorious black hole illusion. This disorienting phenomenon, which can deceive even the most seasoned pilots, combined with the inclement weather, led them into a perilous situation, making them believe they were on the correct course when, in fact, disaster loomed just seconds away. Would the pilots manage to land the aircraft safely, or would the situation culminate in tragedy at the last moment? This narrative recounts the events of AIRES Flight 8250 on the early morning of August 16, 2010. AIRES Flight 8250, a Boeing 737-700 registered as HK 4682, was preparing for a scheduled domestic passenger flight from Bogotá to San Andres Island, Colombia. Initially, the flight was set to depart on August 15 at 9:29 p.m. However, a delay notification was issued, adjusting the estimated departure time to 10:50 p.m. and subsequently, another delay pushed it to 11:45 p.m. After an extended wait, 125 passengers, comprising both tourists and locals, boarded the aircraft. The passengers included Colombian nationals as well as individuals from the United States, France, Brazil, Costa Rica, and Germany. The flight crew consisted of 4 cabin crew members and 2 pilots, with Captain Wilson Gutierrez, an experienced aviator boasting over 7,600 flight hours. The pilot, who had recently transitioned from flying turboprop aircraft to the Boeing 737, was serving as the pilot flying for this journey. His co-pilot, First Officer Camus Galvan, possessed approximately 1,900 flight hours and was responsible for monitoring the aircraft. At 11:25 p.m. the flight crew established contact with El Dorado Ground Control to confirm the revised estimated departure time. The ground controller subsequently cleared the flight for its journey to San Andres, which the pilots acknowledged. After starting the engines, the flight crew contacted ground control again to request taxi instructions to runway 31 right. A few minutes later, the aircraft was pushed back from the gate and began its taxi towards the runway, where it awaited clearance for takeoff. At 7:12 a.m. local time, more than 3 hours behind schedule, Flight 8250 took off from El Dorado International Airport, marking the beginning of a new day. The aircraft ascended steadily to its cruising altitude, and the initial phase of the flight proceeded without incident. The pilots maintained consistent communication with air traffic control, successfully navigating through various control zones. The atmosphere on board was characteristic of a night flight, with passengers settling in, some preparing to sleep while others engaged in light conversation. The journey from Bogotá to San Andres typically lasts about 1 hour and 40 minutes, traversing the Andes Mountains and the Colombian plains before reaching the Caribbean Sea. The final approach involves a descent over the ocean towards San Andres Island, with passengers comfortably settled in. I would like to present today's sponsor, BetterHelp. BetterHelp is an online therapy platform that facilitates easy and convenient access to licensed therapists from the comfort of your home. With a robust network of over 30,000 therapists, BetterHelp ensures that you can find a suitable match tailored to your individual needs and preferences. Therapy sessions can be conducted through phone calls, video chats, or messaging, allowing you to choose the method that makes you feel most at ease. Should you find that your assigned therapist does not meet your expectations, you have the option to switch to another therapist at no extra cost. Your mental health is as crucial as your physical health, and BetterHelp strives to make therapy both accessible and affordable. Additionally, they boast an impressive rating of 4.5 stars on Trustpilot, providing assurance regarding the quality of care you will receive. If you are prepared to take a step towards improved mental health, please visit betterhelp.com/investigation or select Air Crash Investigation at sign up to receive a special discount on your first month of therapy. Now, let us return to the video. At 1:00 a.m. local time, Approximately 45 minutes prior to landing, the captain conducted the approach briefing with the first officer. During this briefing, they reviewed all critical elements of the approach, including weather conditions, the planned route, landing runway, navigation aids, altitudes, and any potential issues that could arise. Following the briefing, the captain programmed the GIGAR-3 Alpha arrival. The V-Zulu approach for runway 6 at San Andres Airport is integrated into the aircraft's flight management system. San Andres Airport features a single runway that measures 2,380 meters in length and 36 meters in width. The approach to runway 6 presents significant challenges due to the surrounding topography, and conducting a nighttime approach to the island can be particularly difficult, as there is often no discernible distinction between land and water, relying solely on the runway lights for visual guidance. The airport is equipped with various landing systems, including a VDME system. This navigation procedure utilizes the VHF omnidirectional range beacon and distance measuring equipment to assist in guiding the aircraft. The VHF beacon transmits signals that enable pilots to ascertain their position, while the DME provides distance measurements to facilitate appropriate altitude adjustments during descent. Following the approach briefing and in light of deteriorating weather conditions, Captain Gutierrez requested a deviation of 8 to 10 nautical miles to the right to circumvent the most severe part of the storm. For the subsequent 20 minutes, the flight continued without any significant incidents. At 1:25 a.m., the flight crew sought clearance to initiate their descent. Initially, Panama Control authorized a descent to 20,000 feet. However, this was later revised to limit the descent to 24,000 feet due to concerns regarding the deteriorating weather, as indicated by radar observations. The captain then requested an updated weather report. The tower confirmed that runway 6 was operational, reporting calm winds, visibility exceeding 10 kilometers, broken clouds at 1,500 feet, and a temperature of 30 degrees Celsius. Additionally, the tower noted the presence of stormy weather in the vicinity of the airport, although no rain was reported 48 nautical miles from San Andres, Panama. The control tower authorized the aircraft to continue its descent and subsequently transferred communication to San Andres Control. As the descent progressed, the weather conditions deteriorated significantly, resulting in heightened turbulence and increasing anxiety among the passengers. The flight attendants provided reassurance, indicating that the weather was expected to improve shortly. In the meantime, the pilots requested a direct route to the GIGAR waypoint from San Andres and received clearance to descend further to 3,000 feet for the V-Zulu approach to runway 6. This approach commences at a waypoint known as GIGAR, located 12 nautical miles from the VDME station at an altitude of 3,000 feet. At this point, the aircraft follows a course of 67 while descending at a gradient of 5.2% towards the final approach fix, which is situated 5.9 nautical miles from the VDME station at 1,600 feet. By the time the aircraft reaches the final approach fix, it should be fully configured for landing, with the landing gear deployed, flaps set, and speed stabilized. The descent then continues to 130 feet above sea level. If the runway is visible at this stage, the pilots will proceed with the landing. However, if it remains obscured, they will maintain their altitude until reaching the missed approach point, located 0.9 nautical miles from the VDME station. Should the runway still not be visible at that point, the pilots will initiate a missed approach procedure. This meticulously coordinated approach guarantees that the aircraft adheres to a safe and precise trajectory, even amidst adverse weather conditions, at 1:40 a.m. Just moments prior to landing, the first officer engaged the landing gear, reactivated the auto throttle, and adjusted the flaps in preparation for the descent. After communicating with the control tower and receiving clearance to land on runway 6, the weather conditions deteriorated, with winds recorded at 10 knots and heavy rainfall that diminished visibility to 5 kilometers. Shortly thereafter, the flaps were set to their final configuration, and the landing checklist was completed. As if the weather were not challenging enough, the tower updated the visibility to 4 kilometers, reporting a wet runway and winds at 8 knots from 40. Upon visually confirming the runway, the captain disengaged the autopilot and assumed manual control of the aircraft. However, due to the poor visibility and limited visual references, the pilots mistakenly perceived their altitude to be higher than it actually was, resulting in a dangerously low approach. This miscalculation is indicative of the black hole illusion, a visual phenomenon frequently encountered during night landings over dark landscapes, where the stark contrast between runway lights and surrounding darkness can mislead flight crews regarding their trajectory. The adverse weather conditions further complicated the situation. Additionally, the captain, who had recently transitioned from turboprop aircraft to the Boeing 737, employed a landing technique more appropriate for turboprops, aiming to touch down precisely at the beginning of the runway. This method allows for minimal margin for error, particularly in a jet and under such turbulent conditions, thereby exacerbating the already precarious situation. At an altitude of 500 feet above the ground proximity warning system announced the critical height, which the captain acknowledged. He confirmed that all preparations for landing were complete and clearance had been granted. In anticipation of potential wind conditions, he instructed to apply maximum thrust and maintain the current configuration of flaps and landing gear. The first officer confirmed the settings as the aircraft continued its descent. However, the weather conditions deteriorated significantly, prompting the captain to request the activation of the intermittent mode for the windshield wipers, which the first officer promptly engaged. They encountered severe turbulence and rapidly fluctuating visibility, yet they persisted with the landing attempt. Unfortunately, the aircraft descended too low, making a standard landing increasingly improbable. The ground proximity warning system issued alerts indicating a dangerously low altitude, which were crucial in signaling the necessity for immediate corrective measures. However, the response was insufficient. "Watch out! Pull up!" the captain exclaimed. At 7:04 a.m. the aircraft struck the ground, coming to rest 49 meters short of the runway. It skidded along the tarmac, resulting in the collapse of the landing gear and the detachment of one engine from the wing. Passengers and cabin crew were violently thrown throughout the cabin due to the force of the impact. The aircraft slid over 500 feet before finally halting, breaking into 3 sections and creating a catastrophic scene. Amidst the chaos, one of the flight attendants swiftly opened the main door, facilitating the evacuation of passengers. Remarkably, nearly all individuals on board were able to escape. The passengers managed to escape the aircraft, defying the odds and surviving what appeared to be an inevitable disaster. The airport's emergency services acted swiftly, extinguishing the flames and evacuating the injured. Despite the severity of the crash, the prompt actions of the rescue team saved numerous lives. However, the incident resulted in the tragic loss of 2 lives and injuries to many others. An investigation by the Colombian Civil Aviation Authority revealed several critical factors that contributed to the crash of AIRES Flight 8250. Firstly, severe weather conditions, including thunderstorms and heavy rainfall, created challenging circumstances during the approach. Analysis of the flight data recorder indicated that the aircraft consistently flew between 50 to 300 feet below the glide slope as indicated by the precision approach path indicators. This was partly attributed to a judgment error, as the crew mistakenly believed they were at a higher altitude. This misjudgment, typical of the black hole illusion experienced during night approaches over dark terrain, was worsened by the adverse weather conditions. The lack of contrast between the runway lights and the surrounding darkness misled the crew into thinking they were on the correct flight path. Furthermore, the captain's extensive experience with turboprop aircraft influenced his handling of the Boeing 737. Unlike turboprops, which are more forgiving during landings, jets like the 737 require precise landing techniques. The captain's landing approach, resembling that of a turboprop, underscored a gap in his training for operating larger jets. A tragedy could have potentially been avoided in the final moments had the crew. The flight crew responded to numerous alerts from the ground proximity warning system, which indicated an imminent need to ascend due to terrain. Regrettably, these warnings were not sufficiently heeded, highlighting a considerable deficiency in situational awareness and decision-making. Despite the urgency of the alerts, the captain did not take the necessary corrective measures, even when the first officer urged him to ascend. Although the flight crew possessed considerable experience, it was suggested that further training in managing non-precision approaches and adverse weather conditions would have been advantageous. The report advocated for improved simulator training to simulate challenging scenarios, underscoring the necessity of strict compliance with approach protocols and the effective utilization of available technology. In light of these findings, the Colombian Civil Aviation Authority and AIRES instituted several safety initiatives, which included revising training programs to emphasize non-precision approaches and operations in adverse weather, updating standard operating procedures, and enhancing flight simulators to better replicate difficult approach scenarios. These measures are intended to avert similar incidents in the future and to ensure that pilots are more adequately equipped to manage challenging conditions.